The Sikha we'll learn today is in the Sikhas Chilach Chaf Aleph, the Sikha for Parshas Zochor. The Rebbe starts like this: that the Takona from Kriyas Parshas Zochor and the Takona of the Chachomim, or it's not even like the Takona of Chachomim. There are different shittas that it's the Raisa. We accept the Challah that it's the Raisa, but concerning this Takona of reading Parshas Zochor, which means Leinen B'Teira Dem Shabbos Far Put in the Parshas Zochor Ashas Shos or Lochamolik, that we read in the Torah, the Shabbos before Purim, the Parsha in Chumash, which says, Zocher Ash'osa Locha Amalek, remember what Amalek did to you. Frag der Mogen Avram, the Mogen Avram asks the question. We find many mitzvahs that are things that you have to remember. There are certain things that you have to remember when you say bracha before Krishma, and Krishma, the way the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch explains which words you have to think certain things, and they are Matan Torah. You always have to remember Matan Torah. Maisa Amalek, this as we're saying, if you remember what Amalek did to the Eden. Maisa Miriam, the story of Miriam that she spoke Lashon Hara against Moshe Rabbeinu, and David made her, gave her leprosy. You have to remember Shabbos, and you have to remember Maisa Egel, that Eden did the Egel. So we have different things that the Torah wants us to remember. So the Mogen Avram asks, why would a Mesaken that only B'Negeya Parshas Amalek, Zochor, the Schira that we have to remember from Amalek, we have to read a special Parsha in the Torah Shabbos before it. Why not in the other Schiras? In other words, if the mitzvah is to remember, they're all the same? There's a mitzvah to remember. Why is there a takona specifically to read special parsha in the Torah in the Geya the Maisa of Amalek? And the Farent for any answers as Matan Torah Yeshlo. The other things, we have other things that specifically are to remember. By Matan Torah Yeshlo Chag Atzeres, we have Shavuos, so there's a special time to remember Matan Torah. Koadin Shabbos we have every week Shabbos, so we remember Shabbos. Umaisa Miriam, Umaisa Egel, and the other two, the story of Miriam and the story of the Egel. Late Tiknu, they weren't misaken to make a special time to read the parsha of those two inyanim, because these are things that remind us of a certain embarrassment by Yidden, and that we don't want to make a fuss. So therefore, what are we left with? Maisa Amalek. Except for that, there's a takana to read in the Torah a special Shabbos to keep and read the Torah Maisa Amalek. The Rebbe says it's l'chure not, and Teres that's enough. Why? If the reason why by the others we don't, because we have a special time that is designated for this inyan, so for Maisa Amalek we also have a special time. That's Purim. Which is which is connected to remembering and erasing Amalek. Because Purim is concerning the destruction, the downfall of Haman. Haman was Amalek, and this is a time when it reminds us of the inyan that Amalek did to erase Amalek. These, as the Kriya from Purim, is so much so that the reading of the Torah that we read on Purim is the Parsha from Milchemes Amalek. We read actually the Parsha where it talks about the story what Amalek did. Vayavi Amalek. We read the Parsha where it says Vayav in the end of Parsha Peshalach where Amalek came. See, Parsha Zochor, we don't read that Parsha. Parsha Zochor, we read the Parsha Kiseitzei, where it says, remember what Amalek did to you. But Purim itself, we read the story of Amalek. So we see the strong connection between Purim and the story of Amalek. Unochmer goes even further. Dosas Parsha Zochor is the Shabbos Far Purim. The Gemara says, why is Take reading Parsha Zochor to remember the story of Amalek is the Shabbos before Purim? So the Gemara says, so it shouldn't be that we should first do the doing and then the remembering. Reading Parsha Zochor is remembering what Amalek did. Purim is when we deal with the actual destruction of Amalek. So the Seder should be, first you remember, and then you go to destroy. First remember, and then you go to Mechias Amalek. So therefore, the Gemara says, we read Parsha Zochor before Purim, today that first we should have the Schira of Amalek, and then we have the Maisa of destroying Amalek. Heisa Zochor, it comes out as Purim is the Asiyah from the Schira of the Parsha Zochor. Purim is actually the doing of Parsha Zochor. So we do have a time in the year when we deal with the union of Amalek. So why do we need a special time to remember Amalek? If we say the reason we don't have a special time to remember, a special Kriya, to remember Matan Torah, because we have a Shavuos which is connected to Matan Torah. We have in the Geya Amalek also a special time, which is Purim. And these are the Shabbos for the Shabbos Parsha Zochor gates. But here we have a special Kriya And the whole Shabbos is called Shabbos Parshas Zochor, as if it's so important to remember, even though we have a time when we deal with the senior. So we need still understanding that saying that the teres that the Mogen Avraham gives is not 100% enough, because you could say that even when they get Amalek, there's a special time. The full mashman for them, it comes out as the takona from Parshas Zochor is not nervous, is not talking zman meyuchad up to the Mona Mais Amalek. That the reason why there's a takona to read the Parsha of Zochor is not because there is no special time, designated time in the year to remember what Amalek did, because there is a time. The reason why we have a special kriya reading Parsha Amalek, because there is something special, something miyuchad in remembering Ma'aseh Amalek more than the chiyuv of the obligation to remember the other things. The whole kasha was based, why do we only read by Amalek and not anything? We don't read in the Torah special kriya for the other schiras. There must be something special in remembering Amalek more than the other schiras. So we have to understand what's so special about remembering what Amalek did, that we don't find by the other things that we are obligated to remember. And because of that special thing, for Parshas Amalek, we made a special kriya. What's so special in this zechira, in this thing that we have to remember over the other things? If you look at in the opposite, the andere schiras, the other schiras are general things, and it has to do with the behavior of a yid, wherever it is and whatever place he is. And the Rebbe goes through the list. Maimed Harsina, for instance, one of them is to remember Harsina, which is Matan Torah. So the Yesod from Gans Torah mitzvah, that's something that's so special, so important. That's the foundation of the whole Torah mitzvah. The other one was Shabbos. Shabbos from the mitzvahs klolius. Shabbos is from the very general mitzvahs. And the Rebbe in the order brings from Sefer HaChinuch, he says, all the Yesod of the whole religion is based on Shabbos. Was the spell nicht nur of them talk for Shabbos, and this has an effect not only on the day of Shabbos, on all 6 days of the week, because Shabbos is mashpia, gives hashpoya into all days of the week. And the Rebbe in order 13 says, look in the Ramban in Yisrael, that it's something that every day you have to remember Shabbos, because Shabbos has an effect on every day. So Shabbos is an important thing. Leidoch, on the other hand, Ma'aseh Egel, which is another thing that we have to remember, is the Hepech from the Anochi v'Le'ilach. It's the opposite of what Hashem said, I am your God and don't have other gods. And that's a very major thing. The Eid, another reason why it's so major to remember the Ma'aseh of the Egel. Since the Eibusher said that he forgave the Yidden for the Egel, but nevertheless he said, that whenever, as Rasha says, Chazal say, that whenever I will punish Yidden Chas v'Sholom for doing some things wrong, I will add a little punishment for making the Egel. So making the Egel is something that is negaya now too. The Montes Yidden. So if you remember what happened by the Egel, it reminds the Yid, how careful we have to be in staying away from evil. It shouldn't come that Eibusher should remember the Avedas, but this is so b'meila we have to remember the Egel, because if we remember the Egel, it'll keep us from doing something bad. Because if you do something bad, it'll include also the Egel. So the Egel is negaya now, but das is doch keila the Rod git masativ. Not only it'll protect us from not doing something bad, it'll also give us a push to do good. Aseitev, because we know that if Chas v'Sholom we don't do it, the Egel will come in. Mafila Ma'aseh Miriam, and even the Ma'aseh of Miriam. Was is lechura ninyan proti, which is a specific thing, was hat nicht gebracht in Titzos for Klal Yisrael for Aladenis. Didn't bring any results for Yidden in all generations. It's a thing that happened then, and she was punished. She became a Metzera. So lechura there, it's not such a major thing. So the Rebbe says it is. This has a lesson to all the Yidden. A viful as darb sein des Hiris von Lashon Hora. How careful you have to be from Lashon Hora. But das is von the Avedas achich modas, is from the terrible Avedas. The Chazal sagen, the Chazal say, as it is Magdil Avedas connect Gibel Avedas, aber the Zohar Gilerais Stomach. That the Aveda of Lashon Hora is overrides the Avedas of Aveda Zohar, idol worship, adultery, and murder. And this is Negeya, that's something that is very hard to be careful with. Like the Rebbe brings the order 15. That's why to remember that is very important. The chutzah tomid, it's always important. Because a person says it's very, very hard to be careful from not speaking Lashon Hara, at least Ova, which is some kind of part of Lashon Hara. So that's a very important thing. Und zusammen damit von der Schwester, and it's from the hardest things to be careful. So you got to remember it more. So these are things which are very, very important in Yiddishkeit. But to remember what Amalek did is a mitzvah prot. It's a specific individual mitzvah. And it doesn't hold any lesson for every Yid in the way he is. And also should be something very general that it's important for us to constantly remember it. So the question is, why Dafke Parshas Zochor, the story of Amalek, is a takone of having a special kriya, because you have to remember it. There are other things we have to remember, and they seem to be more important, and nevertheless, there's no kriya. And the reason must be because there is something special in remembering the story of Amalek. And the question is, why is the story of Amalek to remember more important than remember the other things? The tmiya is noch starker. Rebbe says that this question is even stronger. Why? The purpose of remembering Amalek is in order to wipe out Amalek, to destroy Amalek. Like look in the Psukim, noch Zochor. When the Torah says Zochor asher asa lecha Amalek, remember what Amalek did to you. The pasuk continues. When Hashem will make you rest from all your enemies, Timcha Zecher or Zecher, whichever one Amalek. Zecher Amalek. We read it in both because it's something how you're supposed to say, but the pasuk says that when you have to remember, and then you will destroy Amalek. The Rambam is the Masbid. The Rambam explains this, that is Tzivonu Liskem Hash'osalon Amalek. Hashem commanded us to remember. That's the Schire, to remember what Amalek did to us, and to hate him always. And we should awaken in ourselves the feeling in certain things to fight with him. So it comes out that the whole purpose why we have to remember what Amalek did is in order to bring us to fight Amalek and destroy Amalek. And since nowadays it's not possible to fulfill the union of destroying Amalek physically, number one mitzvah mechias Amalek is never Yidden sein ad Muslim. The whole mitzvah of destroying Amalek is when Yidden are in Eretz Yisrael. And in that situation that they finished with all the other wars, like the pasuk says, that when you're landing at Yisrael and you're finished, you're resting from everything, from all the other enemies, then you fight Amalek. So now we're not in Eretz Yisrael, so fighting Amalek is not shaykh. That's number one. Number two, afile wenn sie wollten gewendet now, even if the conditions would be now, is nicht möglich zu durchführen mechias Amalek. Now it's impossible to fulfill the sin of destroying Amalek, because we don't know which person's Amalek. While the Gemara says, Kvar Olos Hamcherev, Bilbul L'Soilim, Samcherev came, mixed up the whole world. He put nations from one place to another, so there is no place which is designated that we know that this is that nation from the old times. So we don't know if in Egypt should be Mitzrayim and other countries. There's no things like that. And therefore now, most people all over are not from that people. So the people who live in the area of Amalek, for instance, most of them are not from Amalek. They got mixed up. And the din is called the Podesh Merubah Podesh. Anybody who comes from a place where the majority is one way, we assume he's from the majority. Since the majority in every place is not Amalek, so anybody who is from there, we can't consider him Amalek because we follow the majority. So we can't destroy anybody. So since nowadays we can't destroy Amalek, so it comes out. So they're remembering Amalek nowadays. It's not so important. If the whole purpose of remembering is in order to destroy Amalek, and if we can't destroy, so what's the purpose of remembering? So it's not so important. And nevertheless, it's only for this, for the story of Amalek, they established a special Shabbos and a special Kriya. Why? In other words, why is this so special? It's all based on the Nakuda that the reason we have a special Shabbos and special Kriya, because this is more special than the rest. It's a very special thing. And the Rebbe is wondering here, what is the specialty of remembering Amalek? This will be understood by first explaining, to look into the mitzvah itself. What is the meaning of this mitzvah of remembering Amalek. L'chura, first glance is like this. Number one, the balda the tachlis from Schiras Amalek is Mechias Amalek. And now, since like we said before, the whole purpose of remembering Amalek is so we should wipe out Amalek. Favos is the other chiv of Schiras Amalek, eich bismam, and al piteres nitshayach Mechias Amalek would fail. So what is the reason for the mitzvah, the chid obligation of remembering Amalek, even at a time when, according to the purpose is doing? So why is there a mitzvah? We all have to understand why there's a mitzvah remembering Amalek. Number two, why do we need a special commandment to remember what Amalek did to us? Like the Rambam said, in order to awaken within ourselves the idea of fighting with him. So if the whole purpose is fighting, why do we need to remember it before? Why is not enough? The Torah says, the Torah says, destroy Amalek. Why is there an obligation to remember Amalek, and that should bring us to destroy Amalek? Go directly to the point. The mitzvah should be to destroy Amalek and finish. Al derech, Hashem said concerning the 7 nations that there's a mitzvah leisachaya kol neshama, you have to kill all the people from the 7 nations. We don't find that it's a special commandment to remember their bad behavior, that should bring us to fight them. The mitzvah is to destroy them, finished. Why is there a mitzvah here to remember them in order to destroy them? What does that prove? The Fungufa Gedrungen that shows as Afapir the Tachos for Schiras Amalek is Mechias Amalek, that even though it seems, and that's how it is, that the purpose of why to remember Amalek is in order to destroy Amalek, is a Bedoan Inya was Tutzichuf in Schiras Amalek Farzich. There must be something in remembering Amalek as an Inya for itself. Was the far, and the Rebbe brings like a proof to it, that we see that even though the purpose is destroy Amalek, but there must be something in remembering the Maisa Amalek itself. Because of that, Rechem the Rambam, but there is andere meine mitzvahs. The Rambam counts, and same thing, other svarim that count the mitzvahs. So they count Bichias Amalek and Schiras Amalek als zwei besondere mitzvahs mit besondere Gdorim. The mitzvah to remember Amalek and the mitzvah to destroy Amalek are 2 separate mitzvahs in the 630 mitzvahs, and they have different mitzvahs, different details. Ledugma gives an example. Bichias Amalek from the mitzvahs are necheva al tzibur. To wipe out Amalek is a mitzvah, it's an obligation on the community. Like Kamadeus, it is a mitzvah from Melech from the Tzibur. Some hold that this is a mitzvah on the king of the Jewish community. Und die mitzvah hat Kamat Noim, and this mitzvah has many conditions. Dafke lachat nisat Yisrael Oretz, dafke only when you enter into Yisrael, but 8 other conditions. Mashenk is Chiras Amalek, but the mitzvah, which is a separate mitzvah, to remember Amalek is a mitzvah of Yedin Yochid Bazunder, it's a mitzvah on every individual separately, and is a mitzvah Tmidis. It's a mitzvah constantly, not in Eretz Yisrael, it's on every individual, b'chol mokim, all times, all places, b'chol zman, all times. And the Rinyan was vertuget under Schirach Amalek Farzich. So we must say that since we see separate mitzvahs, so this that we accomplished through remembering Amalek is an Inyan Kloli in ganz Torah, noch mehr wie die andere Schiras anal. It's something very general in the Torah, more than the other Schiras. In other words, we came to the conclusion that even though the purpose of the mitzvah seems to be to destroy Amalek, but there is something in remembering Amalek. It's an Inyan for itself, with its own conditions, its own dinim. And that, not the destroying of Amalek, but remembering Amalek is something that's so important that because of that, we have a special day, Shabbos, and a special Kriya, Schiras Amalek. Now, what is that? The beer in them, the explanations like this. The Rinyan von Amalek is Yedeas Rabbeinu Mechavam Limmerbe. It says in Svarim, not written, the Sloshon is written by other, the Rebbe has an order. But in Chassidus, another Svarim, it says concerning Amalek, what's his description of what's Amalek's philosophy? Yedeas Rebbeinu, he knows his master, he knows the Eibishter, understands that there's Eibishter. Miskavan Limbre, in spite, he intends to go to rebel against the Eibishter. Therefore, Eider Ayid Kemekayim Zamechias Amalek, from Amalek and Pshute, before Ayid is able to eventually do the mitzvah, the physical mitzvah of destroying Amalek, Muzer Friya Bavoranen as Bayon in Imalezon is Amalek. First, you have to get rid of this concept of Amalek in you. Amalek represents a certain shita, a certain philosophy. And you have to destroy the people that stand for this philosophy. But before you could do that, you got to get rid of that philosophy the way it's possible, Ayid in himself. This Amalek that's in yourself. You have to make sure you don't have the Amalek. You don't have within you this idea of Yedeas Rebbeinu Mechavam Limmerbe, that you know the Eibishter, you know your master, and you still go against him. I feel need bedakas even in a refined level, because Lakama Sivov, the Rebbe will explain that you have many levels in the union of Amalek, in this idea, this philosophy of going against the Eibishter. So the first thing is Chiras Amalek. Chiras Amalek is in yourself, remember that you might have it, and you got to get rid of it. And that's the most important thing. That's the meaning, contents of the mitzvah of remembering Amalek. It's not only to remember in order after you remember, it'll bring you to do something which will be Melchemes, Mechias Amalek, you will destroy Amalek. That's the Poshab Shat. You have to remember, so that'll bring you to destroy Amalek. So it's not only that. Or if you remember what Amalek did, you will not do something wrong. For instance, one of the reason why we have to remember what happened to Miriam, that will make you not speak Lashon Hara. So you might think the same thing. Remember what Amalek did. So even if you go in a deeper ruchnistic thing, so you will not do things that Amalek did. So it's not that. Remembering Amalek is an asiyah. That itself is the way you are destroying Amalek that's in your heart, in Im Gufa. To destroy Amalek that's within you, which has to be there before fighting Amalek, the way to destroy him is when you remember it, that is the destruction of Amalek. And the Rebbe explains what it means. You can have Amalek inside your nefesh, inside you have Amalek, philosophy of Amalek, was still pale by Nafim, as is Omeir Zain Chas V'Sholem Rebbeinu. This Amalek that you have, which is part of the Yetzer Hara, wants to be pale on you, wants to influence you, that you should rebel Chas V'Sholem against Hashem. And when there's Zochor, so if someone really, really remembers properly what Amalek did, which means remembers properly that that's what Amalek is, that itself destroys Amalek in him. That's what the expression here, because uprooted and erased any possibility that you turn towards this direction of wanting to fight the Eibishter, but if you remember what this is Amalek, that itself will make you not do it. So it's not going to hold you back from Aveda. It'll change your whole mindset that you will not be wanting to be mischaven against the Eibishter. And now we'll understand why Dafke, this one of the remembrance, was connected with a special Kriya in Torah. In Torah. Why Dafke in Torah? It can make a day of remembrance of what Amalek did. How do we remember what Amalek did? To read again in the Torah. Why Torah? Well, Torah is Balabosef Mitzias Salem. Torah is the boss over the way the world is. Al derech divrei Chazal, how you do him, like the Chazal say, which is in Yerushalmi of the Pasuk, kill game or alai. The Torah could change the Mitzias, could change the facts. But it goes in Halacha about a certain dinim that if Al Torah the calendar is changed according to Torah, then things that have to do with nature of the time will change. Torah is the balabos over the world, is the control, the boss over the world. And therefore, if you connect this remembering Amalek, which means remembering the terrible thing in this philosophy of Amalek, and you remember it through reading the Torah, that as I say, so it has an effect. When you read the Torah, it changes things. So if you read that in the Torah, it makes that you don't have Amalek within you, the spiritual Amalek, and this is something that's very important, because what is Amalek? To be mechaven, to fight against the Eibishter, and you uproot that, that's the greatest thing to do. This explains why reading the Parshas of Amalek is a mitzvah from the Torah. It's not the Rabbanon. Many poskim, most poskim hold it's a din that the Torah gave us. It's a mitzvah, says a deiraisa. Why is it deiraisa? Now, why is it deiraisa? We can't ask Kasha, the Torah wants us to do it. But this is going to explain the deeper pshat, what it means that it's a mitzvah sese midaraisa min Torah. When the Eloi mitzvah deraisa like mitzvahs derabanan, no mitzvahs deraisa are greater than mitzvah derabanan. The deraisa came from the Torah, the mitzvah came from the Torah. But there's something specific that there is a difference between a mitzvah of the Torah and a mitzvah derabanan. So one of the things is was mitzvahs deraisa a starke pula eif univel. A mitzvah deraisa has an effect on the world, on a thing, on something. While the mitzvah derabanan does not have an effect. What does that mean? The Rebbe says, we know that in different nachreinim they go in that length, that they make a difference As Isura der Reise sein and Isur Chefze, and Isura der Rabbana is a Gavre. Isur Chefze means when the Torah says don't do something, the object becomes forbidden. When the Torah says don't eat chazer, the chazer itself is forbidden. The chazer itself is, it's called Sholosh Klippus Atmeis Lagamber, the chazer is bad. So why can't you eat chazer? Because chazer is poison. It's a spiritual poison. So chazer is poison. Mitzvah the Rabbanon, when the Torah, the Rabbanon said don't eat a certain thing, which is also with the Rabbanon, the thing itself doesn't become poison. The Rabbanon just said to a person, we tell you don't eat it. The thing itself didn't change. The fact that thing is forbidden doesn't make it bad. It's not poison. But we want you not to eat it, and they have a right to tell us. That's what he says. Mitzvah the Reise is a chefte. The thing itself that's also forbidden to be eaten becomes disgusting. According to many opinions, when the Rabbanon made something goser, it's only an issue for a prohibition on the person to eat it, for instance. But the object itself is not bad. The Chachamim legen ruf an issue of the mention. The Chachamim put a prohibition on the person. But they don't do anything to the object itself. So comes out that the mitzvah deraisa has more effect on things of the world. And the Rebbe says like this. On the other hand, we find it differently. Those was mitzvah derabanan hamamayil of mitzvah deraisa. It says some places that mitzvah derabanan has something over a mitzvah deraisa. Like the Chachamim tell us, that the mitzvahs derabanan, the words of the Rabbanan, are more sweet to me than mitzvah of the Torah. So here we see the mitzvah derabanan more. So it's true, but that's from a different angle. He says, it's all but gay, the person. The Gabba, the person, the Eibishter has love more when the person keeps a mitzvah derabanan than he keeps a mitzvah deraisa. But in the key mitzvah she'sifar rabbanan, because if you do the mitzvahs that the Rabbanan added, that expresses the desire and the sweetness of a person enjoys to be a servant to Hashem. Was the far better and the person Salosh and the Medrash Rabbi Yidden asked the Eibishter to make Zaydas, give us mitzvahs that shows how much you love the Eibishter. You want he should tell you what to do. Und dann noch bei Gedugend sich nicht damit und ist noch mehr Zaydas. And then when the Rabbanan came, that means Yidden that came from within the Yidden. Yidden are asking the Eibishter, saying to the Eibishter, we want to do more things for you. Or there macht Ziyog l'Teira l'Gzeiris, or we didn't make certain fences to something of the Teira, could they noch mehr versichern in Kiyam Gzeiris to make sure we don't go over, we keep the mitzvahs of the Eibishter. So it comes out that that's what it means. That as far as the person is concerned, what shows more the person's connection to the Eibishter, mitzvahs derabanan, more than mitzvahs deraisa. But what it accomplishes, the mitzvah itself, mitzvahs derabanan don't affect the object. They tell a person what to do, but they don't change the opposite while the mitzvah deraisa does. Another thing you could say, by mitzvah deraisa, die bald sie peilen in Welt, if a starker make, since the mitzvah of the Torah have an effect in the world in a stronger way, is by zei nit as kentik as mis mekaim the mitzvah beleis mitzvah HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not so obvious that they do the mitzvah because that's what Hashem commanded. Why? Weil Sgulas HaMitzvah, was he tut in Be'elam, is Meilam with Kabbalah Hilship Kiyam HaMitzvah. Since the mitzvah has an accomplishment, changes something in the world, that covers up on the fact that I'm doing it for the Eibishter. In other words, it's possible I'm doing because I like what it accomplishes. It changes the object, it makes the object into no good, and yeah, that means something to me. So it covers up on the fact that I'm doing it because the Eibishter said, but it's a commandment from the Eibishter. Mashenken Kimitzah Rabbanon, but when you do Mitzvah Rabbanon, but it's Gulas HaMitzvah nicht as stark, then the accomplishment of the mitzvah is not so strong because it doesn't change anything. So when the Rabbanon said not to eat, let's say, Bishul Akum, so it doesn't change because we said before that the Rabbanon didn't affect the object, they just made me not eat it. So there, with the Gulas HaMitzvah nicht as stark, with the Gulat, with the mitzvah comes not so strong, that expresses that when we do the mitzvahs, not because we accomplish things in the world, we change the world, that's why we do it. The that expresses, I'm only doing Evet Hashem because it has to do with me. And I'm doing it not because it accomplishes much. So it's that I see because I'm doing it because I know it has an effect on the world. I'm very happy that it changes the world. This doesn't change the world. And I still do it. That shows more that I want to do it because the Eibishter said so. That's the mila of mitzvahs derabanan. But when we talk about the object itself, those was mitzvahs darf luft on the well that the mitzvahs have to accomplish in the world. So only mitzvah the Torah have the koyach of Torah to affect the object, the mitzvahs of the world. In a was is mitzvah derabanan now, which mitzvah derabanan don't have. Now we understand why the mitzvah of Schiras Amalek is a mitzvah min Torah. The father is clear. Parshas Zochor, a mitzvah says min Torah. That's why reading Parshas Zochor, but those gita keach nesev, because it's min Torah, it gives a stronger keach at the Schiras Amalek zol ufton di mechias Amalek v'nitten nidan shevodem, which means so it makes, since it's a union in Torah, which in Midaraisa, which has an effect on the thing. So in this case, it has a stronger effect that it should destroy Amalek. Now, in this case, we're talking about Amalek inside the person. Not to confuse, it's a mitzvah midaraisa. So it has an effect on the chefts. In this case, the person is the cheftzah. A mitzvah deraisa affects the cheftzah, while the mitzvah derabban only affects the gavra. But here, in the gavra, in the person himself, there is a thing called Amalek. And we want to change that. A mitzvah deraisa has the effect, has the power of changing the chayfetz. So we want to change that Amalek should not be Amalek anymore. A mitzvah deraisa has more power to do it. That's why to change this mindset of Amalek that could be in a yid, that comes from mitzvah deraisa. How the Rebbe continues. The Baldas Chiras Amalek is a mitzvah midis. Since the mitzvah remembering Amalek is a mitzvah for steady. It's verstandig, das ist eine Linie, was jeder darf sich in dem verworren und tomit b'chol azman. Since it's a mitzvah always, so we always have to make sure that we don't have Amalek within us. And as the Rebbe said before, you have many levels in Amalek. So you have a simple level Amalek the Amalek that we have inside is trying to tell you, go against the Eibishter. But not for everybody, that is, because some people are so strong in the Yiddishkeit that it won't happen. But there's Amalek in a more refined way. Even though there is no place chas v'sholem to say as a yid darf sich tomid v'avoren for nid zayin ha'yedei as Rabbeinu b'skaven limber, but that yid always has to be careful or has to make sure that he's not going to try to go against the Eibishter. Don't always need that. Maybe sometimes it happens, but you can't say that's a mitzvah constantly to make sure that doesn't happen. Why would we think it might happen? Therefore, aber ständig hier sein beworben in der Minie von Amalek bedakas. You always have to be sure that you don't have Amalek bedakas, which means in a more refined way. Gefragt, as von dem kann sof herauskommen in von Judea und es kam und and it could be bedakas, and Rebbe will explain what it means Amalek, the philosophy of Amalek in a refined way. So you have to be careful with that. And besides that, the Rebbe says that it's possible that if you're not careful in the Amalek in a refined way, it could lead you to the regular Amalek. Babir, the explanation is like this. It says, David said, I put my hand on my chair, on the chair of Ko of David himself, that I will have a milchama, a war with Amalek. So the Chazal, that here it says, on the name of Hashem, David calls himself Yud-Kei, Ko. That's not the complete name. The complete name is Yud-Kei, Vov-Kei. But here it's only Yud-Kei. So the Chazal tell us, the name of the Eibishter is not complete until you erase Amalek. Kolzman Amalek is Kayim, is Hashem Mishlemus. As long as there is Amalek, the name of Hashem is not complete. Sees Blaze Yudkei. All you have is the Yudkei, Amalek, which means Amalek is Managad of the Ace, is Vofket Shemaraya. As long as Amalek is there, he's fighting not to allow Hashem's name to be complete. Which letters is he not letting to happen? Vofke. That means he's fighting against Vofke. That's what it is. That's what Chazal say. As long as Amalek, when the Eibishter's name is not complete, Amalek is disturbing that. What's he disturbing? It's taking away the Vavke. Chodetamua, not understood. Baldas Amalek is Mechavan Limred Bey, since Amalek, the Gemara says, is trying to rebel against him in Eibishter. Is my time. I said, what is the reason? I said, is Menagin Blaze of Shleimus Hashem Nitaf Hashem B'chlobuse. So why is he only fighting that the name of Hashem should not be complete? Why isn't he fighting against Hashem's name? Because he's fighting against Hashem. And the second thing, in the Nigud of Shleimus Hashem, when he fights that Hashem's name should not be complete, Nitaf Yudke Hashem. Why is he not fighting the Yudke? What's his Kedim and Hecha for Vavke? We know that Yudke, the first two letters of Shem Havaya, is a higher level than the Vavke. So why is he fighting against the Vavke, not against the Yudke? And the third thing, Adarabah, by fighting against the Vavke, he's not completing his fight, because as bleibt Yudke, if he's taking away the Vavke and the Yudke remains, bleibt der ganze Hashem for the Zayin Shem. There's still a name of the Eibishter. Yudke in itself is a name. It happens to be one of, according to many opinions, one of the 7 names that are the main names which you're not allowed to erase. So why is he fighting against the Vovke? He should fight against the Yutke. First of all, Yutke is greater, but besides that, by fighting the Vovke and leaving the Yutke, he's still leaving Hashem's name, but he's trying to fight it. Why is he not fighting the Yutke? So the Bir Bezer, the explanation is like this. Die Polis von der Dalladeis Shem Havaya vernieden, wie sie stehen in seinem Benefesh Odom, like this. What the four ACs, the four letters of Shem Havaya, having what they are. No, everything that we have by the Eibishter, we have parallel, we have a reflection in the Yid. Because it says Adam El Elyon, we are compared to the Eibishter. It says the Eibishter created a person which mainly is Yidden, with Salmeinu, according to his image, and our image, meaning image of the Eibishter. So therefore, whatever we have by the Eibishter, we find similar in a different level, but similar in a person. So if you have Yud Kei Vav Kei, 4 letters in Hashem's name, there is these 4 letters, they are also in the person. So what are they in the person? So this said in Chassidus. So they're like this. Yud Kei is Chochmah and Bina. Not to go into why Yud Kei is Chochmah, but Yud Kei represents Chochmah and Bina of the person. Yud is Chochmah, Bina is, and the Hey is Chochmah. The Yud is Chochmah, the Hey is Bina, which is the Seichel of a person. Chochmah and Bina, they're 2 parts of the intellect. The Vav is Midas Shebelev. Those are the Midas. Vav is 6, and there are 6 Midas. Also, the Midas come from Seichel. Vav is a straight line, so it comes from the Seichel. So the Vav represents the Midas and also represents Torah that David gave us. And the Hey represents Dibur Maaseh. That represents talking and action, which are the mitzvahs. So Vav is Torah, and the mitzvahs is the second Hey. So again, the Yud is Chochmah, the Hey is Bina, the Vav is Midas and Torah, the Hey is Dibur Maaseh, which are mitzvahs. Ike Mechemes Amalek is of the meaning from Pel Mamish. Amalek, when he fights, he's not fighting against the philosophy, against the Seichel. He's fighting against the actuality, the reality. If Meichen Alein, against the intellect, which is Yudke, Pchenes Yudke, is a mitzvah imenaged. That's not what he's fighting. He marked as a stark at the Yedeyas Rebbeinu. We said before, Amalek is Yedeyas Rebbeinu. It represents knowing the Eibishter and intending to fight him. So he himself knows the Eibishter. In other words, he's not fighting the fact that you have the Seichel, the proper Seichel. As Mahot Nora Verstand in Elokus, if you only understand Elokus, you understand the Eibishter, he doesn't care. And Vilober does only pales out of Midas Shebelev. He wants what he's fighting. It shouldn't have an effect on the Midas, which means the emotions of the person. Was bring it to Machshava Dibur Maaseh, which bring to thought and speech and action, which is the Vovke. That's a pshat that Amalek is fighting the Vovke. Question was, why is he fighting the Vovke, not the Yudke? The Yudke represents Seichel. He's not fighting that. But he's fighting, he doesn't want that should come down to the Midas and to the Machshava Dibur Maaseh. Adarabah, Demont is the Amrida Yuma B'Yeseh. Again, he's happy if you know the Eibishter. He wants you to fight the Eibishter, rebel. The more you know the truth of the Eibishter, and you nevertheless fight him, that for him is better. That's what he wants. That's a greater, worse merida, worse rebellion. That's what the Chazal say on him. He knows that his master. He knows the Eibishter. And from deskem is limred and still he goes to fight it. While the idea hot nit kan wirken gemidas machshava dibur maaseh, because the idea, what he wants, and that's by him. It doesn't affect his midas, it doesn't his emotions, and machshava dibur maaseh, his thought, speech, and action. But pel mamash, that's what he wants every yid to be. So that's one of the inyonim what Amalek represents in the person. When in them prat von Amalek, as a yedeyas rebbeinu bringt nit kabbalas el rebbeinu. And in this prat, this detail, that Amalek represents the Indian, that you know the Eibishter, but that knowledge that you have of the Eibishter does not bring you to accept the yoke of your master of the Eibishter. Al kaponim le the idea. We're talking about a person who does the right thing, but he doesn't act upon it according to the level of his idea. You could understand very good, and your action is not in proportion to how much you understand. But Kabbalah says machriach Torah mitzvahs, because if you accept the yoke of Hashem, it forces you to do them. If you know that you accept His yoke, you do it. When I says felt the Kabbalah says Rebbeinu, he says bedakas mitzvah Rebbeinu. And if you don't have the proper Kabbalah sale, bedakas in a refined way, it's already called that you're rebelling against the Eibishter. That everybody. We said before, mitzvah, remember Amalek is by everybody. Why by everybody? So he said because by everybody, even if you're not in the very coarse way of Amalek, but you're in the refined way of Amalek. If you understand the Eibishter, but it doesn't bring you to the action, the way according to the level of your understanding, that's already going against the Eibishter. And that is shaykhs to everybody. While in jeder Darge von Avedes for Yediyas Hashem can sein a not for Atois in the meaning of the Kabbalah sale. Because in whatever level you are, the result of the understanding should bring you to Kabbalah sale to accept the yoke could be not in proportion. That means that you're still lacking the real Kabbalah sale according to your level. And that is what Amalek is to a certain degree. That it doesn't matter. You understand Hashem good, understand very good. But it shouldn't have the proper effect on your Meisim. This is why, this will explain why the whole war of Amalek happened when the Eden were not in Mitzrayim on the way to Matan Torah, before they had Matan Torah. Why? Since everything is divine providence, is moving for you understand. Ados Gufe was Mechemes Amalek, the Gashmis is given Kedem Matan Torah. That this is the physical war of Amalek. Was it before Matan Torah? Is weil Amalek Beruchnias is menaged nicht zu lassen the Minyan v'chidish Matan Torah. Because Beruchnias, what is Amalek? Amalek's Inyan is not to allow Matan Torah. And it'll fit to what the Rebbe said before what Amalek is, and it fits that this is something not allowing Matan Torah. What's Matan Torah? The thing for Matan Torah is, the ufta of Matan Torah is, what was the specialty about Matan Torah? Till Matan Torah, they also learned Torah. They always did mitzvahs. The chiddush of Matan Torah is, as Torah Leib shamayim. The Torah doesn't remain in heaven. She's only bleiben neu beruchen is, it shouldn't remain only in a spiritual way. Whereas Muzarop kum elamat, it has to come down here. Limud the pale, push it physically have to learn. Mitzvahs maisi is daf can actually do mitzvahs. V'adarabba maisa huike. Matan Torah told you that the main thing is the Weise. But those things given time as Malachim. The Malachim, when they Moshe came to receive the Torah, the Malachim complained. What did they say? Chamuda Gnuza, you have such a precious thing that's hidden in heaven. No hit shamayim. Give your glory, give your Torah to us in Shamayim. What did they mean with that? They said like this. They said, since the Torah is the most highest level in Ruchnius, darf der Ort to know, so where should it be given? It has to be given in the spiritual world. But it's higher than Ruchnius of Elam Hazeh. And what's the Ruchnius in El Hazeh? The Seichel of a person. You're giving the Torah to the Seichel of a person down here. It belongs in Shemayim. When you destroy what Amalek stands for, and what does he stand for, as we said? Amalek is that you should not come down from the higher levels, from Yudke to Vavke. And if you destroy him, that means that from your brain, it is Nimshech in the Maise, in the actual Maise. Sidosh Leimus Hashem, the name of Hashem is complete, which means you Eich Vavke of the Vavke. So then you could answer the Malachim. They said, Noit Chala Shemayim, put the Torah to Shemayim, and that's what gegeben, Torah Dolamata, Torah is given down here. Because we know that Amalek wants the Torah to stay in the Ruchni, not to come down in the second half, which is down here. But when you say no, that when you destroy Amalek, that's wrong, Torah could be given down here. So that's why this is, so in other words, what Amalek says is similar a little bit to what the Malachim say, but the Malachim mean it in a good way, and then Amalek meant it in a bad way. This will explain really why to remember Amalek is more important, greater than remembering the rest of the things. Because to remember Amalek, that's the condition, and that's the Hakdama, the introduction to the whole giving of the Torah. Before you get the Torah, you receive the Torah, you have to destroy Amalek. Was there lost me the Amshocha for Mechanimi the Semaisa? It doesn't allow the Amshocha that comes down from your brain, from the Seichel, into your Maisa. You got to get rid of that, because if you have that, you can't get the Torah, like we said before. Because if not for if we stick to the Sword of Amalek or what the Malachim said, the Torah can't come down. So you have to first, before Matan Torah, that's what Amalek did. Amalek fought the Eden before Matan Torah to stop the Eden of Matan Torah, which is the opposite of what he wants. When we do the mitzvah of remembering Amalek in the time of Golus, which is Mavatal, destroys Amalek that we have within us, that hastens the fact that we should be able to do the mitzvah of destroying Amalek, push it physically. But the whole world and the Gashmis. As it's Vetzaim Derinya for meaning Melech, the first there will be, because they say that is first you have to appoint a king, then you can find a Molech. So we will have the appointment of a king, which is Malka Mashiach, which is Mashiach. He will verify, he'll be able to figure out who's Amalek. When the Noach Yilchem Melchemes Hashem, it says he will fight the wars. Kelo Mulchomel Hashem B'Amalek, including the war that Hashem says he has with Amalek, which is Melchemes Amalek. Be not saying it's all the Lashon of the Ram, and will fight the wars and win the wars. When the Noach, but they're boy in the Beis Hamikdash Shlishi, then he will build a third Beis Hamikdash Mheira B'Yamein Mamish very soon in our days Mamish.